My name is Edward Hayes. And that was the day I realized a man can lose his home without ever leaving it. If you won't take a loan for me, then get out of this house. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They landed heavy. Final like something that had been decided long before it was ever spoken. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the table I had built with my own hands. Every beam in that house, every joint, every piece of steel had passed through my grip at some point in my life. I didn't buy that house. I didn't inherit it. I built it. And yet, in that moment, I didn't belong in it anymore. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I picked up an old horseshoe from the counter and started wiping it down slowly with a cloth. It was an old habit. Whenever my thoughts got too loud, I let my hands do the work. Across from me stood my son, Brandon Hayes. His shoulders were tense, leaning forward just slightly, like a man trying to hold control over something already slipping away. On the table in front of him sat a thick folder. The edges were bent, like it had been handled many times in frustration. I didn't open it. I already knew what was inside. Numbers, debt, signatures, double quotes. 500,000, he said, his voice rough, almost worn out. All you have to do is sign. I looked at him carefully. Rue looked at him. For a brief second, I searched for the boy I used to know. The one who sat beside me in the forge, asking questions about heat and metal, about how to tell when steel was ready. But that boy wasn't there anymore. In his place stood someone who saw me as something else. Not a father, a solution. Your name still carries weight, he added. That line settled into the room like dust. To him. I wasn't a man, I was a signature. I was leverage. Jessica stood near the sink, holding a coffee mug she hadn't touched. She didn't look at me. Not once. It was like I had already disappeared from her world. This house needs to be cleaner. More suitable, she said quietly. There was no direct insult in her voice. That's what made it worse. It wasn't anger, it was dismissal. I set the horseshoe down carefully on the table and straightened up. My knees gave a soft creak, but I ignored it. You think this house just appeared here? I asked, my voice calm. Brandon let out a dry, humorless laugh. You already signed the transfer papers, he said. It's mine now. It just like that? Something inside me closed. Not broke, not shattered, closed, like a door that would never open again. There was no anger in me, no argument, just a cold, quiet understanding. To him, my entire life had been reduced to paperwork. I turned and walked down the hallway. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. That told me everything I needed to know. My room was at the far end. Small, quiet, still carrying the faint smell of wood and machine oil from another life. I opened the old wooden chest at the foot of the bed. It had followed me for decades. From places and years no one in that house really understood. Inside, there was nothing valuable. At least, not to them. Work clothes, faded photographs, and one thing I hadn't touched in over 40 years. A satellite phone. I picked it up slowly, feeling its weight in my hand. Some things don't lose their meaning with time. They wait. I stood there for a moment, then turned and walked back into the living room. Brendan was still standing there, arms crossed. Jessica leaned against the chair, watching, waiting, expecting a reaction, an argument, maybe even a breakdown. I gave them none. Instead, I said exactly 5 words. Come get me, right now. Jessica let out a small laugh. Who are you calling? Dad? Brendan asked, shaking his head. I didn't answer. I lifted the wooden chest and walked past them, out the door. The air outside was colder than I expected. A thick layer of fog had settled over the dirt path leading to the gate. It made everything feel dissonant, quiet, almost unreal. I placed the chest beside me and sat down on the porch step. I checked my watch. The second hand moved. Steadily. Precise. NBOTHERED. Time. Doesn't slow down for anyone. Voices drifted from inside the house. They weren't whispering. They didn't need to. I heard enough. Bank. Deadline. He'll have to leave anyway. I didn't react. Because by then, I already had 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Brandon stepped outside once. Looked at me, then turned back in. How long are you planning to sit there? He asked. I didn't respond. I adjusted the chest slightly so it sat straight beside me. 30 minutes. That's how long it took. Right when the second hand hit its mark, something shifted. At first, it was subtle. A faint vibration under my feet. Then, a sound, low, deep, controlled. Not like a truck, not like anything that usually came down that road. The fog ahead began to move. Not drift, but split. Something was pushing through it. I slowly lifted my head, and then I saw it. A long, dark vehicle emerged from the fog. Polished metal, catching what little light there was. It moved slowly, deliberately, Like it had all the time in the world, it came to a smooth stop at the gate. Behind me, the door flew open. I heard it clearly. Sharp, sharp. Sudden Brandon stepped out first. Then stopped. Jessica came up behind him. Neither of them spoke. For the first time since that morning, they were silent. I stood up. Slowly. Not because of the car, but because I understood something they didn't. This moment wasn't about showing power, it was about revealing truth. And from that point on, everything they thought they controlled was about to slip through their hands. I picked up the chest and took my first step toward the gate, and I didn't look back. The vehicle came to a complete stop, and for a moment, everything went quiet. No engine noise. No movement. Just the faint sound of dry leaves shifting under the tires. I walked toward the gate slowly, the wooden chest brushing against my leg with each step. I could feel their eyes on my back. Heavy, confused, uncertain, they still didn't understand. Not yet. The rear door of the vehicle opened first. No rush, no sudden motion, just a smooth, controlled movement. 3 men stepped out. Dark suits, clean lines, not a wrinkle out of place. They didn't look around. They didn't scan the house. Didn't react to Brandon or Jessica standing behind me. Their eyes were fixed on me, like I was the only thing in that space that mattered. I stopped a few feet from the gate. Then, another man stepped out. Slower than the rest. Older. Silver hair, neatly combed back, a cane in his right hand, though the way he stood made it clear he didn't truly need it. It was more a habit than a necessity. He looked at me. And in that moment, time did something strange. It folded. 40 years disappeared like they had never happened. Because I knew those eyes. Even before he spoke, I knew he took a step forward, then another, and then something happened that neither Brandon nor Jessica were prepared for. The man stopped and bowed. Not a polite nod, not a gesture of greeting, a full, deliberate bow. "Sir," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I've been waiting for this call for 40 years. Behind me, I heard Brandon inhale sharply. Jessica didn't move. I didn't react. I simply studied the man's face. Time had changed the lines, the details, but not the core, not the memory. "William," I said. Just his name, nothing more. "That was enough?" He straightened, a faint expression of relief crossing his face. "I came the moment the signal came through," he said. "I hope I didn't keep you waiting." "I wasn't waiting," I replied. "I was just sitting." One of the men stepped forward and opened the car door wider. William turned slightly, gesturing with quiet respect. "Please." I didn't move immediately. Instead, I turned around for the first time since the car arrived. Brandon stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, but no words coming out. Jessica looked different. Now. Not cold, not distant. Uncertain, trying to understand something that didn't fit into the version of reality she had built. "I'll be gone a few days," I said calmly. "How's you, please?" No one answered. No one could. I turned back, stepped into the vehicle, and sat down. The door closed behind me with a soft, final sound. Not loud, but permanent. As the car began to move, I looked out the window. The house, the porch, the place I had built with my own hands. It faded into the fog. And strangely, I didn't feel loss. Just distance. Like a chapter that had already ended before I stood up from that chair. William sat across from me, hands resting lightly on his cane. For a while, neither of us spoke. The road stretched out ahead, quiet and empty. Then, finally, "I never forgot that day," he said. His voice carried something deeper than respect. Gratitude. I didn't respond immediately. "Some memories don't need to be spoken out loud." "He kept her promise," I said after a moment. William nodded once. "Everything I have started that day." The car turned onto a private road, long and lined with tall trees that blocked out the fading light. His estate came into view slowly. Large, but not loud. There was no unnecessary display, no attempt to impress, just quiet presence. We stepped out, and I was led inside. The room they showed me was simple. A wide window, a chair, a table, nothing excessive. William stood across from me as I sat down. Waiting. He knew why I had come. "I want the truth," I said, "about my son." He didn't hesitate, didn't ask questions. He simply turned slightly and spoke. To someone standing near the door. "Check everything," he said calmly. "Finances, documents, connections." Then he looked back at me. "It will take some time." "I have time," I replied, and I did. Because for the first time in a long while, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was deciding. Night came slowly. The room grew quieter, warmer, but my mind didn't settle. I kept seeing Brandon's face. Not the anger, not the demand. The fear behind it. That wasn't a man in control. That was someone being pushed. The question was, by who? The door opened softly. William stepped in, holding a folder. Thinner than I expected. That alone told me enough. He didn't sit, didn't speak, right away. Instead, he placed the folder on the table in front of me and looked at me carefully. There are things in here, he said slowly, that will change how you see everything. I placed my hand on the folder, paused, then opened it. Numbers. Clean. Precise. Cold. Read line by line. Each page. Stripping something away, layer after layer. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't failure. This was design. Brandon's early transactions were stable, careful, even promising. Then suddenly, everything changed. New authorizations. New directions. Decisions that didn't match his patterns. His signature was there, but the thinking wasn't his. I turned another page, and then I saw her name, Jessica. Boldly. Not directly. Small entries. Minor. Approvals. Background movements. Invisible to anyone not looking closely. But I was looking closely. Very closely. She didn't push him, William said quietly. She guided him. I leaned back slightly. That made sense. Pressure breaks people. Guidance reshapes them. I kept reading. Then I saw the account. Offshore. Clean. Untouchable. Money. Moved slowly. Carefully. Small amounts at a time. Enough to avoid attention. Enough to go unnoticed. Until it added up. 1.2 million. I closed the folder for a second. Not because I was shocked, but because everything had just become clear. She needed you out, William said. I nodded. Double quotes, yes. Not emotionally. Not angrily. Just fact. There was one more page. That I opened it. And this time, I didn't move for a few seconds. A name. At the end of the chain. A legal advisor. The same one handling Brandon's death. I didn't need an explanation. The pieces fit together perfectly. He doesn't know everything, William added. At least, not yet. I looked out the window. Darkness had fully settled. No, I said quietly. He doesn't. And that's when I understood something important. Brandon hadn't betrayed me. Not completely. He had been led. Shaped, turned. Like steel in the wrong hands. I closed the folder. Slowly. Carefully. There's one more thing, William said. I looked at him. They believe you're hiding something, he continued. Something valuable. From the old forge, the land behind it. I let out a quiet breath. So that's what this was about. Not just money. Expectation. Suspicion. A story planted and allowed to grow. She told him. You never shared everything, William said. That you kept something back? I didn't respond. Because that part was true. I hadn't shared everything. But not for the reasons they believed. I wasn't hiding wealth. I was protecting meaning. There's a difference. And they didn't understand it. Not yet. William watched me carefully. What do you want to do? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't about reaction. This was about timing. Finally, I spoke. We don't expose everything yet. He frowned slightly. You're sure? I nodded. If you bend steel while it's cold, it snaps. I looked at him directly. I needed to pass through fire first. William didn't ask anything else. He understood. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about something deeper, something harder. Letting truth arrive. At the exact moment, it can't be ignored. I leaned back in the chair, closed my eyes for a second. For the first time that day, I felt something return. Anger. Not pain. Control. I knew. The next move wouldn't happen by accident. It would happen exactly when I decided it should. The next morning, I didn't rush. There was no need to. When something is built carefully, it doesn't require speed. It requires precision. I sat by the window in William's estate, the glass slightly open, letting in a thin line of cool air. It carried the smell of trees and distant soil. Steady, grounded, nothing like the tension I had left behind. William's people brought in more documents. One after another. Statements, transfers, authorizations. I read everything the way I used to, inspect steel. Slowly. Patiently. Ignoring nothing. Brandon's path became clearer with every page. He hadn't fallen suddenly. He had been led there. Carefully. Step by step. At first, his decisions made sense. Small risks. Calculated moves. Growth that came from effort, not luck. Then. The shift. New approvals. New advisors. New directions that didn't match his thinking. Someone had drawn a line. And all he had done was follow it. Jessica's name appeared again. And again. Never in the center. Always. Just outside it. like a hand guiding from the shadows, opening doors, closing options, making one path look like the only path. That's how you control someone without them realizing it. You don't force. You limit. By midday. One thing was certain. Brandon didn't understand the trap he was in, but he was already deep inside it. William stood near the door, watching quietly. "There's more," he said. "There always is," I replied. He stepped forward and placed another document in front of me. "The house," he said. I looked at it. "Upcoming auction notice, date confirmed. Process finalized, no delays left. They're moving fast," I said. "They have to," William answered. "Whoever is behind this, they don't want time to interfere." I nodded slowly. That made sense. Time reveals cracks, and cracks lead to truth. I closed the file and stood up. "Prepare everything," I said. William looked at me carefully. "You going yourself?" It wasn't a question. He didn't argue. He didn't suggest alternatives, because he knew this wasn't something that could be handled from a distance. Some moments require presence. The day of the auction arrived quietly. No drama, no warning, just another morning. For everyone, except the people involved. I arrived early. Not to make a statement, but to see clearly. The building wasn't large. Bright lights. Clean floors, rows of chairs, arranged in perfect lines. It smelled like paper, and something metallic beneath it, like a place where things were measured, valued, and taken apart without emotion. I walked in without drawing attention and took a seat in the last row, far enough to observe, close enough to act. Brandon was already there. Second row, alone. His posture was straight, but tight, like he was holding himself together by force. The same folder sat in front of him. This time it was neat, organized, controlled. I understood. In his mind, this was the last move, the only way out. William entered a few minutes later. He didn't sit with me. He took a seat on the opposite side of the room, like a stranger, like we had never met. We didn't need to speak. Everything had already been decided. The room slowly filled. Voices low. Conversations short. No one there cared about the story behind the house. To them, it was just property, numbers, opportunity. That coordinator stepped forward. Calm, professional, detached. He began reading details, location, structure, starting price, no emotion, no history, just facts, stripped of meaning. 2 million. The first bid came quickly. Another followed. 2 million 1. 2 million 2. The numbers climbed. Not fast, but steady. Predictable. I watched. Brendan. Each increase tightened something in his face, his jaw, his eyes. Not panic. Not yet, but pressure. The kind that builds quietly until it can't be held anymore. I thought back to the kitchen, to his words. It's mine now. On paper, maybe, but paper doesn't carry weight, not real weight. I waited. Because timing matters. Not for drama, for impact. When the price reached the point Brandon had been hoping for, I saw it. A small shift in his shoulders. Relief. Temporary. Temporary. Fragile. The coordinator raised the gavel. Going once. I stood up at first. No one noticed. That's the thing about quiet movement. It doesn't demand attention. It takes it. I walked down the aisle slowly. Each step steady. Measured. A few heads turned. Then more. Then Brandon. He turned around, and for a moment, he didn't react. He just looked at me, like his mind needed time to catch up to what his eyes were seeing. I didn't hold his gaze. I reached the front table, placed a thin folder in front of the coordinator. "Stop," I said, not loud, but firm, enough to cut through the room. The coordinator hesitated. "Sir, you cannot sell what you do not own," I said calmly. That got everyone's attention. The room shifted. Energy changed. Confusion spread. The coordinator frowned and opened the folder. His expression changed almost immediately. Color drained. Hands slowed. Behind me, I heard movement. William stood. Then stepped forward. Unhurried. Controlled. Double quotes. "This property," he said clearly, "is registered as an industrial legacy site. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Double quotes. The rights attached to it cannot be transferred through standard private documentation." Murmurs spread across the room. The coordinator flipped through the pages again. Faster this time. More carefully, like he was hoping to prove it wrong, but he couldn't. Then Brandon stood up. Suddenly. "That's not possible," he said. Paz's voice broke slightly. "I transferred it. I signed everything." I turned to him for the first time. Directly. "I know you did," I said. "But you signed away something you never had the right to transfer." That hit harder than anything else. Not loud, but final. William continued. "All transactions connected to that transfer are invalid." The gavel never came down. The auction didn't end. It simply stopped. Like a machine that had just lost Power. No winner. No sale. Just silence. In realization, I looked at Brandon. Really looked this time, not as a man standing against me, but as a son, standing in the middle of something he didn't understand. You don't know the bank anymore, I said. His breathing quickened. Confusion, fear, disbelief, all at once. Then who do I owe? He asked. I held his gaze. Me? The words settled into him slowly. And that's a debt you can't repay with a signature. His shoulders dropped, not from defeat, from understanding. For the first time, there was no one guiding him, no voice, telling him what to do, no illusion left to follow. Just truth, raw, uncomfortable, necessary. I didn't say anything else, because some lessons don't need explanation, they need silence. The room emptied. Slowly. After that, people left in small groups. Whispers followed, questions without answers. But none of that mattered. Brandon remained where he was. Still, quiet, as if moving would break something further. Why did you do this? He asked finally. Not angry, not accusing, just Ty. I did it to close one circle, I said, and to open another. He didn't respond, because he understood at least. Enough to know things weren't over, not even close. I turned and walked out. William followed. Outside, the sky was low gray, heavy. There was no victory in the air, no relief, just direction. Because exposing the truth was only the beginning. And I knew what came next would be harder than everything that had already happened. We didn't speak on the drive back. There are moments when words only make things worse. When silence is the only way to let something settle properly. Brandon sat beside me, staring out the window, not asking questions, not defending himself. For the first time in years, he didn't seem to know what to say. And that was a start. The road stretched ahead. Quiet and familiar, when we turned toward the old property, I felt something shift not in the world. But in him, the house came into view first. Then behind it, the forge. The tin roof was worn now, darkened with time. The wooden door carried marks from years of use. Scratches, dents, history that hadn't been erased. I parked the car and stepped out. The air smelled the same. Metal, dust, burnt heat that never fully leaves a place like that. I walked to the forge door and opened it. The hinges gave a low, tired sound. Inside, everything was still there. Tools lined up, work surfaces, worn smooth, nothing polished, nothing decorative, just purpose. Brandon stepped in behind me slowly. He looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. I reached to the side and picked up a set of old protective gear. Heavy gloves, apron, goggles, I turned and placed them in his hands. No speech, no lecture, just the weight of them. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. Neither did I replied. I stepped past him and walked further inside. For 5 years, I said calmly, you'll work here. He didn't respond immediately. I could feel the resistance building. The instinct to push back, Saw continued. Minimum wage. Every day you show up, it counts. I turned to face him. No shortcuts, no signatures. He looked down at the gear in his hands, then back at me. For a moment, I saw it again. That flicker, the urge to reject it, to walk away, to choose the easier path. But there wasn't one anymore. Not this time. He nodded, small, barely noticeable, but real. That was enough. Jessica wasn't there. I didn't call her. I didn't need to. Truth as a way of finding its way, without help. A few days later, William confirmed what I already knew. The accounts had been exposed, the transfers traced, the connections uncovered. There was nowhere left for her to step without facing what she had built. It didn't happen loudly. No dramatic confrontation. No shouting. Just doors closing, one after another. Quiet consequences, necessary ones. Back at the forge, the days moved slowly. Brandon showed up every morning. At first, he was clumsy. His grip was wrong, his stance unstable. He tried to rush, tried to force the metal to move before it was ready. I didn't correct him immediately. I let him fail. Because some lessons can't be explained. They have to be felt. Eventually, I stepped in. Watch the color, I said one afternoon. He frowned slightly. What, the steel? I said. Watch it. We stood side by side. The heat rose steadily. The metal shifted, slowly, from dull to red, from red to something brighter. Too early, it cracks, I said. Too late, it weakens. I looked at him. You don't decide when it's ready. It tells you. He didn't answer, but he listened. That mattered. Some days, he got frustrated, set the hammer down harder than needed, walked. Outside. Sat on the steps, silent. I never followed. I never pushed. Steel needs time to cool, so do people. William came by, sometimes. He never stepped inside the forge. He sat on the porch, drinking tea, watching the yard. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. We talked about small things. Weather, time, the kind of things that don't demand attention, but still move forward. Weeks passed, then months. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the light turned soft, Brandon set the hammer down carefully, not in frustration, not in anger, just deliberately. "I think I understand now," he said. I didn't ask what he meant, because I already knew. Not about steel, about everything else. That night, I sat on the porch. The wood creaked under the chair, familiar, steady. But William sat beside me, quiet as always. From inside the forge, I could hear the sound. Hammer against metal. Not rushed, not forced. Just rhythm, consistent, earned, the same way it had always been. The luxury car was still parked, near the edge of the yard. Covered slightly, in dust now. It didn't stand out anymore. It didn't need to. I looked at it for a moment, then looked away, because it had served its purpose. It wasn't the answer, it was just a signal. I stood up and walked toward the house, opened the door, stepped inside. Everything was the same. Nothing had changed physically, but the feeling that was different. Not perfect. Not repaired. But solid. Like a well done properly. I paused before heading to my room, turned slightly, looking back toward the forge. Brandon was still there, working, sweat darkening his shirt, movements slower, but more controlled. I didn't call out to him, didn't interrupt. I left him there, with his work, because that's where he needed to be. And for the first time in a long while, I knew something for certain. This wasn't about punishment. It was about rebuilding. Not the house, not the money, but the man. And that takes time. Time didn't fix anything. It revealed things. That's the difference people don't understand. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of the forge became something steady, something real. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest work. Repeated day after day. Brandon stopped counting time after a while. At the beginning, he used to check the clock. He used to measure the hours like they were punishment. But slowly, that changed. He started measuring something else. Progress. His grip became firmer, his stance steadier. The way he held the hammer, the way he watched the steel. It wasn't forced anymore. It was learned, earned. One evening, I noticed something small. He didn't rush to strike. He waited, watched the color carefully, then moved. At the exact right moment, clean, precise, no wasted effort. I didn't say anything, because he already knew. That was the first sign. Not that he had learned the craft, but that he had learned patience. And patience changes a man more than any lecture ever could. Jessica's name didn't come up often. Not here, not in the forge. But the world outside didn't stop moving. It never does. What she had built, quietly, carefully, started coming apart. This way, quietly, carefully. The accounts were no longer hidden. The transfers no longer invisible. The people she relied on stepped away one by one. No one stands beside a structure once the foundation is exposed, especially when that foundation was never solid to begin with. I didn't chase her, didn't confront her, didn't need to. Consequences don't require witnesses. They just require time. One afternoon, Brandon walked out of the forge and sat beside me on the porch. He didn't say anything at first, just stared ahead, like he used to when he was younger. "I thought I understood everything," he said finally. His voice was quieter now, not weak, just honest. "I thought you were holding something back from me." I didn't interrupt. "I thought you didn't trust me," he continued. "That you had something valuable, and you didn't think I deserved to know." He paused, then let out a slow breath. But I was wrong. I looked at him, not as the man who stood in the kitchen that day, but as the one sitting here, now. "What did you think I was hiding?" I asked. He shook his head slightly. "I don't even know anymore." That answer meant more than anything else he could have said. Because it wasn't about the truth. It was about realizing he didn't know. And that's where understanding begins. There was nothing hidden. I said calmly, "Not money. Not land. Not anything." "Like that?" He frowned slightly. "Then, what was it?" I leaned back in the chair, the wood creaking softly under the weight. "Perspecto," I said. He looked at me, confused. "I didn't teach you to chase things," I continued. "I taught you to build them." I let that sit for a moment. But somewhere along the way, you started looking for shortcuts. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. Because he knew I didn't see it. I added quietly, "That part is on me." Val caught him off guard. He turned toward me. "You're blaming yourself?" "I'm acknowledging it," I said. "There's a difference. Silence settled between us again. But it wasn't heavy. Not like before. This one was steady. The kind that allows something to grow. "I'll pay it back," he said after a while. I shook my head. "No," he frowned. "You said I owed you." "You do?" I replied. "But not in the way you think." He waited for the first time, not rushing for an answer. "You don't repay this with money," I said. "You repay it by not becoming the man you were on that day." That hit him harder than anything else. I could see it. Because that version of himself was the one he had started to understand and regret. "That's the debt," I added, "and it doesn't have an end date." He nodded slowly. Not out of agreement, out of acceptance. That evening, the forge stayed active longer than usual. The sound of the hammer carried into the night. Steady, controlled, different. I stood by the doorway for a moment, watching him work. There was no hesitation in his movements anymore. No rush, no anger, just focus. And that's when I realized something. The work had done what words never could. It had reshaped him, not quickly, not easily, but properly, like steel that had finally been treated the right way. I turned away and walked back toward the house. The same walls, but no longer carrying the same weight. Before going inside, I paused, looked back one last time. The forge glowed softly in the dark. Inside, Brandon continued working, not because he had to, but because he chose to, and that made all the difference. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. No noise, no final moment, just quiet. But in that quiet, there was something new. Not perfection, not closure, something better. Understanding. People think a home is built with walls, or money, or ownership. It's not. A home is built on what remains. After everything else is stripped away. Respect, responsibility, and the willingness to face the truth. Even when it breaks something inside you. That day in the kitchen, when he told me to leave, that wasn't the moment everything ended. It was the moment everything was revealed. And sometimes, that's the only way something real can begin. Outside, the hammer struck once more. Then again. Then again. Not loud, not angry, just steady. Like a man finally learning how to build something that lasts.